Hello everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Listings API video series. My name is Federico, and I work as a solutions architect at Amazon Selling Partner Developer Services. In our previous episode, we introduced you the Listings API and the functionality it offers via 10 different building blocks. If you haven't watched it, I recommend you to do it before continuing with this video. In today's episode, we will present some of the most common listings use cases and how to implement them using the Listings API, and do a show demo of one of these workflows using Postman. Let's get started. Our first workflow implementation is about listings items that don't exist in the Amazon catalog. That is, products that no one else is selling on Amazon yet. One of the peculiarities of this use case is that Amazon doesn't have detailed information of the product. Therefore, the selling partner needs to provide an increased number of details compared to when the product already exists in the catalog. Having said that, let's take a look at the workflow. The first step is to use the Catalog Items API to confirm that the item doesn't exist in the Amazon catalog. The search operation will help you achieve this. Next, you need to identify the correct product type for the item. You can do this by querying similar items that do exist, referring to the browse tree guides available in Seller Central, or the browse tree report that you can get using the Reports API. Once identified, you will use the Product Type Definitions API to retrieve the corresponding JSON schema describing the attributes and constraints for the product type. With that, you, or actually the selling partner, will fill the product details and validate that all conditions are met. For example, you will check that mandatory attributes are present and that they meet the type and length constraints. The next step is to submit the generated JSON document to the Listings Items API by sending a PUT request. The API will provide synchronous feedback that you have to read to check if the submission went through or has issues that have to be fixed. Finally, you will wait for listings notifications to arrive. This will inform you about changes in the status and issues associated to the SKU. The information provided by these notifications is very important and shouldn't be overlooked, since additional issues that prevent listings from going live can be detected at this stage. And if not properly fixed, the product might not be discoverable or viable to customers. If needed, you can use the GET operation from the Listings Items API to inspect the listings issues. A slightly different use case is when the item exists in the Amazon catalog and you just want to start selling it. In this scenario, instead of sending a large payload with all product facts, you will just attach an offer to the corresponding ASIN. The first step in this case is to confirm that the item actually exists in the catalog. This can be done by using the search operation of the Catalog Items API using identifiers like ASIN or UPC, or using search keywords. If an exact match is not found, it means the item needs to be created using the workflow described in the previous slide. Otherwise, you can go ahead and confirm if the selling partner is eligible for the item or not using the Listings Restrictions API. If it isn't, the API will provide action items for the selling partner to remove the restrictions. Step 3 is similar to the one executed in the previous workflow, but not exactly the same. In this case, you will retrieve a schema using listing offer only requirements, which will only include sales terms and not product facts. After filling the data and validating it using the rules provided in the schema, the workflow resembles the one of new items in the catalog. Data is submitted and both synchronous and asynchronous feedback is validated. If needed, you can call the GET operation from the Listings Items API to retrieve the SKU and fix the associated issues. Finally, you might want to just update a listings item that already exists in the Selling Partner catalog. In this case, you will start by identifying the corresponding SKU and use the get operations from the Listings Items API to retrieve the current information. The item can be inspected in order to identify the required changes. You will again use the Product Type Definitions API to retrieve the product schema and prepare the listing submission with attributes adhering to the JSON schema for the product type. In this case, it is important to validate that non-editable attributes are not being updated. Otherwise, the request would get rejected. To update the data, you can use both the put or the patch operation from the Listings Items API, depending on whether you want to do a full or a partial update. If you want to do a partial update, you can omit from the input payload all the attributes that are not changing. Finally, after submission, you will validate both synchronous and asynchronous feedback, apply fixes if needed, and resubmit until all changes are accepted. Deleting a listings item is also possible with the Listings Items API. As you can see in the diagram, the workflow is very simple. You just have to identify the SKU and use the delete operation afterwards. The API will inform you about the results, including issues in case there were any. The last workflow that we wanted to introduce to you today is creating, updating, and deleting items in bulk. As you probably noticed, the workflows we described before operate on individual items one at a time. While the allowed submission rate is high and will probably be enough for most of your workloads, you might eventually need to submit requests at a higher rate. The workflow described here will help you achieve that. The first step involves creating a JSON listings feed document with all items that you want to create or update. This feed type is, of course, in JSON format and can include up to 10,000 individual items. You can combine create, update, and delete requests in the same document, and each of them will be processed accordingly. While not explicitly specified in the diagram, keep in mind that each entry included in the input feed must adhere to the JSON schema for its product type. This means that the constraints and validations that we described in previous workflows also apply here. So don't forget to validate the data. Once the JSON document is validated, you will use the create feed document operation from the Feeds API to retrieve an S3 pre-signed URL that you will use to upload your content. After that, you will call the create feed operation, which will trigger the execution of your submission. The feed processing finished notification will inform you when processing is completed. Alternatively, you can periodically call the get feed operation, but notifications is the recommended approach. At that point, you can call the get feed document operation to retrieve the processing report and validate the results. The information included in this report is equivalent to the synchronous response that you get from the individual put, patch, or delete operations. The asynchronous feedback will be informed via notifications in the same way that we described in previous workflows. So make sure to validate this information too. Now, let's jump to a demo on how to execute a listings submission workflow end-to-end. For this demo, we will use Postman as the API client to submit requests to the Selling Partner API. The first step in the workflow is to use the search definitions product types operation from the product type definitions API to get the product type name for the product that we want to submit to Amazon. For this demo, let's use luggage as a keyword and submit the request. We can see that the API replies with one product type, which is luggage. So we will use it in our next API call. We go and use the get definitions product type operations We use luggage as the product type name and submit the request to get the JSON document for this product type. We can see that the API response provides a number of attributes like meta schema, schema, requirements, property groups, and so on. For this demo, we are interested in the link under schema, which provides the JSON document for the luggage product type. We use the pre-signed URL that the API returned in order to get the actual JSON document. We can see that the JSON document is for the luggage product type, and we see there are a number of attributes that are included in the JSON document. For example, we have definitions with some attributes that are used throughout this document, like marketplace ID and language tag. The required section provides a list of attributes that are mandatory for any listing submission for this product type. And then we have all the different properties like item name, brand, and so on. Now that we have the JSON document for the luggage product type, we will submit a listing to Amazon using this information. We use the put listings item operation from the listings items API to submit our product. For this demo, we have created a very basic and simple JSON document that includes two properties. In this case, condition type and item name. We use the value new for condition type and spinner suitcase for the item name. We submit the request and we get a response from the API. We can see that the submission was accepted, and we also get a submission ID, which is the one we will be using in case we have to contact developer support to troubleshoot any issue. So, our submission was accepted and asynchronous processing has started. We will receive a notification that will tell us whether the submission was successfully processed or if there were any asynchronous processing issues. For the sake of this demo, let's assume that the notification confirmed that the asynchronous processing finished successfully. So our product is now live. But we identified that maybe the item name is not descriptive enough and we want to change it. So let's go ahead and use the patch listings item operation to change it. In this case, we will use the replace operation. We specify the attribute that we want to update and we specify the new value. In this case, we use hard side carry-on spinner suitcase luggage. So we again submit the request to Amazon and we wait for the response. We can see that the submission was again accepted and we get a new submission ID. We need to wait again for the notification confirming that everything is okay, which guarantees that our submission was successful. So let's go ahead and read this item from the Setting Partner catalog. We use the get listings item operation in this case and specify the SKU that we want to read. We call the API and we get a JSON document with all the product information like SKU, summaries, offers, and fulfillment availability. The number of attributes that you get will depend on the information that you include under included data in the API request. So, we confirmed that our listings item has the information that we submitted and we are happy with that. As a last step, let's delete the listing. For this, we use the delete listings item operation. We specify the SKU and again submit the request to Amazon. Again, we can see that the submission was accepted and we get a submission ID that we can use to troubleshoot any issue in case we have to contact developer support. We can see that the issues section in this case is empty because the submission was valid. But if there were any issues, those would be reported by the API under this attribute. So with that, we concluded this demo. I hope it was useful for you to understand and visualize how a listings submission workflow is implemented. So that was it for our third episode. Thank you very much for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. In the description of the video, you will find links to useful resources for the topics we covered today. In particular, the Building Listings Management Workflow Guide provides relevant information and guidance for designing and implementing your workflows. And the Migrating Listings Management Workflows Guide walks you through the different strategies and recommended approaches for migrating to Listings API. In our next episode, we will highlight the best practices that you should follow while implementing Listings workflow and give you some hints on how to troubleshoot errors. Please join us.